Okay, hello and welcome to today's event on enhancing your Microsoft Power BI dashboards with Scribe Online Replication Services. I'm Jason Gumpert from MSDynamicsWorld.com, and joining us for today's event are Lou Antonucci and Ryan O'Connell of Scribe Software, and we also have Colin Wright from Microsoft's Power BI team joining us. So as we get started, please know that you can add your feedback and ask questions during today's event. You can use the Q&A block that you should see to the right of the main presentation window to ask your questions at any time. We'll be saving time at the end to get those answered. We also have a couple poll questions that we wanted to start off with. I'm going to open those up now, and we're going to leave that open for about 30 seconds just to gain a little bit of feedback and give the presenters a better idea of who is in our audience. So, without further delay, please allow me to welcome Lou Antonucci to start things off. Lou. Lou, it sounds like you're on mute. Let me open up your line.
Okay, Jason.
Hi, Lou, can you hear
I think we're good now. Yes. And if you can hear me, I think we're good to go.
We can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Jason, and thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us for our session today. Ryan O'Connell and I are here to talk a little bit about our Scribe Online Replication Service and how using this replication service can really help you enhance what you're doing with Power BI and your dashboards. Okay, so before we get into the meat of the session, I just wanted to quickly review the agenda. I'll spend a few minutes just to update everybody on Scribe software and who we are, and also talk about our replication service. We'll then have a demonstration of Scribe Online Replication Service, kind of to show you how easy it is to use the service. Talk about the benefits of using Scribe Online Replication with Power BI. Then we'll do another demonstration which really highlights the additional value that you get by using our replication services. Along with that, there are some planning and best practices that Ryan will talk about that you would want to use when you're using our replication service. And then, of course, we'll have a summary and time for Q&A at the end. So just briefly, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Scribe software. We've obviously been in the data integration space for close to 20 years now, and primarily in the Microsoft Dynamics space, but we also support the other major CRM vendors such as Salesforce, Sugar CRM, and so on. We're very partner-centric in how we go to market with our products and services, and therefore we have hundreds and hundreds of mutual partners with Microsoft and in the Dynamics space. We also have an extensive ISV network of a number of marketing automation applications. A lot of you that are dealing with CRM and Power BI are most likely also involved with working with marketing automation applications, and we provide connectivity to a number of the leading providers there. Our key offerings are both cloud and premise-based. Our Scribe Online platform, we provide integration services as well as our replication services. And our Scribe Insight platform provides migration and data integration services that can be used on-premise in a hybrid scenario or even in the cloud as well. We're certainly an established global company in this respect, and we have a headquarters in Manchester, New Hampshire, as well as Den Haag in the Netherlands. Now, when we talk about our services for our cloud-based platform, Scribe Online, there are two major services that we provide. One is our integration service, which really allows our end customers to integrate application data across their enterprise, whether it's cloud, on-premise, or hybrid. And it is a cloud-based service, and it does run in Microsoft Azure. Now, our replication service, which is what we'll be talking about today, allows the end user to replicate their cloud CRM databases down to a local instance of SQL or an instance of SQL Azure or to Oracle. And in that respect, when we talk about Scribe Online Replication Services today, this is where we can provide additional value to you when you're using Power BI. Because as Ryan will explain, will allow you with Replication Service to replicate some, most, all, or just the important parts of your data down to SQL or SQL Azure, which then you can pull from that into Power BI and then enhance your dashboards by having just the right amount of data, let's say. So with that, what I'd like to do is hand it over to Ryan, and what he's going to do initially here is to go through just a demonstration of how easy it is to use our replication service. Ryan?
Great. Thank you, Lou. So really what I want to have everyone kind of get out of this portion of the demonstration is just that, is when we talk about the ability and the ease of use, because that's going to be crucial to understanding really the benefits and how you can extend out your Power BI solutions with replication services. So the beauty of our Scribe Online solution is that it's in the cloud, and the platform really only requires you to have a browser. So you simply log in to our solution, and the first thing you do is go right to our marketplace, because really the power, the workhorse behind what makes our solution so effective and so dominant in the integration space is that we've got these pre-built connectors, these really named connectors where we literally have a connector called Microsoft Dynamics CRM. And as part of this demonstration, we're connecting it to a SQL Azure backend. So as part of the exercise, you would simply go and locate our Dynamics CRM connector, click Install, and then you would do the same. You would scroll briefly down here to our Microsoft SQL Server connector and click Install. And for as long as it took me to describe it to you is about how long it takes to install. So again, we don't ask you to go to a separate website, separate login, separate account. You simply log into your Scribe Online platform, connect to our marketplace, install our connectors, and basically you're ready to go. And then you can come right into your solution container here, and we make it nice and easy. You just simply click on New, and you select a new replication service. You give it a name. I'm going to call this Power BI Solution 1. And then I go to my agent, and with Scribe Online, we have a very easy process for deploying a cloud agent. Then we go to source, and based on the connections that we created, we're going to go after and we're going to select the connection that we created, and the connection is to our CRM Online system.
And just to mention that Ryan mentioned our cloud agent here. And the way Scribe Online works for replication service is the agent is simply that piece of the service that does your data movement and your data transformation.
Thank you, Lou. I appreciate that. And that's part of the solution as a whole. And again, we make that very easy for you. It's really just a point and click. You get your agent deployed, and then you are, like I said, you can get to work in your solution. And so to kind of pick back up where we left off, so I've selected my source, which is my Dynamics CRM Online, and then my target is where we're going to replicate the data to, and I'm going to choose my SQL Azure database using my SQL connector. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to select my entities. And again, what makes this so powerful and so effective and so easy is that, again, behind the scenes, our connector already understands the dynamic space, understands all the entities, understands those relationships. And really, all you need to do is select what you want to replicate. You can easily select everything based on the recommended entities that about 90% of all users choose to replicate. Or you can just choose everything and replicate all of your entities, or you can narrow it down and select the targeted entities that you want to replicate over for the purposes of your reporting that you want to do with Power BI. And then you can schedule it. And again, we make this very easy. So you can schedule it once a day, reoccurring, bi-weekly, or you can have it going every day, every so often, based on your requirements and what you need to report on. So it's really that simple. And for the end user, this is really kind of a dream come true in the sense that it doesn't require you to have to be a developer to put this together. And with that said, let's go back to our slides here. So Really, again, I hope it was kind of resonated how simple that was to put it together. And what really makes this an enhancement to your Power BI experience is the fact that you don't have to connect directly to CRM. You can connect to now your database. So you can populate a centralized warehouse really with just the data you care about with a full copy of CRM or just a targeted subset of data. And then with that, you can then use your Power BI dashboard to point to that SQL Azure database where you've centralized all of your reporting data. So you can now streamline it, speed the process up, make security granular, really kind of do whatever you would like to do with regards to that data. But everything starts with a plan. I know we're talking about ease of use and how simple it is, and frankly it is. There's no mystery here. What I showed you in the demonstration is really all the moving parts. But it really comes down to planning, and when we talk about best practices, everything starts with a good plan. And the key is to know what you need to replicate and how often. So it boils down to what are you reporting on? Who's the consumer? And just because you can replicate everything doesn't mean that you should. So I remember being in the consulting world myself and in the business intelligence space. It's very important to know what you're looking for because when you want to really enhance and show the performance of your reports, it's really important to make sure you're focusing on just the data that your customers or your consumers care about.
And I'd like to just add here that, when you look at using Power BI, if you're a single user with Power BI today and CRM or CRM Online, it's fairly easy to move data to Power BI and do your particular individual dashboards. But when you think about doing dashboards that are across the enterprise or cross-department or specifically for the sales group or specifically, say, for a marketing group or a financial group within the company, this is where having these capabilities that Ryan is referring to by using replication services, moving your CRM data into this data warehouse or database, and then being able to pull from that, it allows you to, I guess the term might be, best coagulate the right data for the right dashboards.
Agreed. Thank you, Lou. And when we talk about that, we again building off of that plan and talking about the enterprise, and when you know that there's data that you need to put together in a report, it's very important to know that that report represents the data that is available to you and available to you based on what time that data needs to reflect. So that's where planning and best practices come in with regards to how you kind of set up your replication services. So we give you the ability to architect out the solutions the way you would like them. And really it's important to make sure that those solutions reflect the results you want to achieve. And you understand that you don't really, again, you don't have to replicate all your entities, but when you do find an entity that's important, and there are entities in CRM that don't necessarily have a modified date on them, which means that you need to process that entire entity wholesale, it's important to make sure that you're aware of that and that you design and architect out your solutions based off of that so you're not slowing down a more high transactional type of a job with one job that needs to process an entire host of entities that don't have a modified date on them. So with that said, we're going to step back into the solution. So really what I have up here on the screen is kind of a breakout of how those solutions can be put in place here. And what I've done is I've broken them out based off of, kind of the planning that comes with designing the reports. So whereas we may have higher transactional entities or lower, and again, as I talked about before, with those entities that really don't have a modified date on them, you want to make sure that you separate them out, maybe put them on a different schedule, because the idea is if you're presenting reports to your customer base, your executives, your board of directors, that you're making sure that that report has the data in it that they're looking for. So if I know I've got higher transactions, I really want them to run in their separate solution so they can process as needed without having to worry about those lower end transactions slowing it down. And again, that falls right back into that comment about having those entities that don't have a modified date. Separate them. Keep them away from the other jobs so they don't impact them. And once you've done this, and again, it all comes down to the planning, and you can put them on separate schedules. You can have them run throughout the day, have them run once a day. And again, that's part of the flexibility of the solution, is that it's not a one-size-fits-all, that you really can customize this according to your business. And then once you've done that, you're then ready to kind of come into your Power BI dashboard and connect to your database. And with the console, it's very easy to do. You can simply go in, select Get Data from a database, and since you're already replicating out your entities to your SQL Azure database, you can simply click on your SQL Azure database and make that connection directly to the database. Or if you've taken that second step and possibly built out an analysis services cube, tabular or multidimensional, again, something you can very easily connect to in here. And again, as we kind of showed you in the earlier demonstration, things change. And we know in every organization, you know, you provide somebody with a report, they're going to ask for more. So you kind of open up that can of worms. But that's okay, because if the requirements change, if the plans change, we make it very easy for you to come back in here, add new entities. You simply double-click back into your solution. You simply browse through and select the additional entities that you would like to have added to your solution, so that way it's now reflected in the database when it replicates. So again, very simple, very easy to do. It doesn't require a degree in development, and it's something that pretty much anyone in your analyst team could step in and make those change for you.
And what you see here too is the fact what Ryan has done is he's created 3 different solutions to do different types of entities. Now, whether those are high transactional entities, low transactional entities, whether they're sales entities versus marketing entities, right? So what the system really allows you to do is to create templates that can be reused and adapted and scaled. And then that way, different departments could have different templates that they could use, continually replicating their data to their SQL database. So the database is continually being updated, okay? And I will also mention that those updates work with really what we call net change. So it's not constantly replicating the full database or the full amount of data. It's those things that change. And therefore, as Power BI reads that to the dashboards, you know, the dashboards are always up to date with the latest data.
Excellent point, Lou, because that's part of, again, understanding the results, understanding what you're putting together when you architect out a solution is, and that's partially why I highlighted the entities that don't have a modify date, because when you're using replication services and you're talking about a high transactional set of entities, really the first time it runs is when it replicates everything. And then the second time it runs, it's really only looking for that net change. Because there's a modify date, Scribe will simply go through, it will read through that entity, and it will ignore all the records that it's already processed previously and only look for those modified dates that have changed. And that's why it's important to keep that job separately from those entities that don't have a modified date. Because those transactions can be processed and replicated very quickly instead of having to be kind of slowed down by having additional entities in that same solution that don't have that incremental modified date available. So that's really one of the powers of this. And again, this is that template framework that Lou was talking about here, is that you can literally build a template based off of your needs. So whereas you may have a dashboard that has targeted information for finance, you can literally build your template here in Scribe Online and Replication Services to reflect the type of schedule, to reflect the type of data and how often it needs to be replicated for the purposes of making that report be as effective and as timely as needed for those people who need to use it.
Yeah, and one other thing I'd like to mention too is earlier when Ryan talked about assigning an agent, and he assigned a cloud agent, you can use either a cloud agent or an on-premise agent, and which means that if you're, for example, you could do all of this if all of your systems were on-premise as well. And so therefore you could just download your agent and have that on an on-premise server. So you can do cloud to cloud, cloud to ground, ground to ground. Any of those options are workable with Scribe Online and our agent process.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the biggest takeaways here, is that even though we're really kind of talking cloud to cloud, it's really not, it's really just for the purposes of demonstration. Really, the sky's the limit. We built this solution around the idea that not every customer is going to have the same environment. Not two companies are the same. So we recognize that not everybody's in the cloud and that some organizations, in fact, most organizations, are in some form of a hybrid scenario where they have most of their solutions on-premise and they're moving towards cloud, or some split 50-50. The reality is that the solution, we don't care. And we're equipped, and we basically position you to be able to construct whatever scenario you need to based on your needs. So, and that is where the agent comes into play. And again, it's not that one is better than the other, the cloud versus the on-premise. It's really, we're giving you choices. We're giving you the ability to construct the type of scenario or architecture that reflects your business. So again, I just want to re-emphasize the fact that we're not saying a one-size-fits-all. We're literally putting the power in your hands to make the decisions you need to have the most effective reporting environment. Great. So again, I'm going to touch a little bit more on the grouping here. So again, as Lou had highlighted and as I kind of demonstrated for you there, the key really comes down to planning again. And when we talk about best practices, I'm sharing with you really what we've seen with our customer base and what we've seen with our other ISVs and partners that really use our solution extensively, and that is, you know, when they plan out and when they construct their dashboards and their reports, it really is important that they're really reflecting the user base. Who's the consumer? And that's why, again, it's important to make sure that you're grouping your entities appropriately based on the kind of reports that you want to create. And again, when we talk about grouping higher transactional entities in a separate solution, again, it's keeping those higher priority data separate. And again, it may be because you need to process it and replicate it more often, more frequently. So it would be on a separate schedule. So it's important to make sure that you make those decisions and plan accordingly. And again, that ties right into the grouping lesser transactional entities for the same reason, that you want to make sure that it's not, you know, these lower priority transactions aren't slowing down or stepping into that higher transactional processing time. So again, put them in those separate solutions and put them on their separate schedule, so again, that they're reflecting the type of reports that you want to create. And not forgetting our entities here that don't have those modified dates. And for you CRM admins out there, I'm sure you're very familiar with what those entities are, but again, they don't have a modified date, so it's really important to make sure that you're putting those into their separate solution, so that way they're not slowing down those higher priority jobs and higher priority solutions. So in summary, really want to make sure that people kind of understand the importance of leveraging replication services, that you can, if you choose to, you can move some, all, or most of your important data. But again, you don't have to replicate everything. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So it's important to have a plan and to keep in mind what you need. And as part of that plan, kind of implement these best practices and making sure that you're grouping as efficiently as you can the data into the proper replication solution, so that way you're getting the most out of your replication jobs. And again, you can connect that directly Power BI to SQL or to your analysis services, but knowing that now that you have the ability to make those decisions yourself.
And just one other point here to make, you know, because we do support the major CRM vendors, you can use replication services with Salesforce as well to replicate your data to SQL Azure and to use Power BI. As a matter of fact, replication services also works with Marketo, marketing automation application. So you can use it, you know, in a number of different areas. There are a lot of companies out there that may have you know, Salesforce as a CRM system, but they're moving to Dynamics CRM, and they've got a couple systems in place at the same time. You can use replication services to serve your Power BI purposes there as well.
Exactly. And so A lot of, again, a lot of flexibility there, and we touched primarily on replication services with Power BI, but you can take this a step further, and these replication services can support a whole host of other needs, whether it's replicating out a database for the purposes of archiving, or really you can think of a whole host of reasons to do it. So again, it's not just for this purpose, but this is really one of the more powerful ways to utilize our solution, especially for those out there that are responsible for developing metrics for your company. So with that said, I'm going to hand it back to Lou.
Yeah, and so very, very quickly here, I just wanted to say that, and we've got quite a number of questions I see coming up in the questions pane, so we've left a good amount of time for questions here. But if you do have, and this was just to give you a good overview today of what we can offer and the value we can bring. We'll certainly get into some of those details, I'm sure, in some of the questions here. But if you have other questions, feel free to contact us. If you're a Scribe customer or reseller, connect with your account executive or your channel sales manager. You can ping us at sales@scribesoft.com. You can email Ryan or I directly. You can also go to our website, www.scribesoft.com. And I will also mention, feel free to attend our Scribe User Conference in Portsmouth this coming May 18th through the 20th. We'll be covering what we can do for Power BI with Scribe Online Replication Services, as well as a number of other technical integration and migration sessions. But I do, before we get to questions, I believe that Colin Wright is probably still on the line. He's a principal program manager with the Power BI group at Microsoft, and I think Colin wanted to say a few words. Colin, you still with us?
I sure am. Thank you. Hi,
Great.
everybody. Here at Power BI Engineering, I mean, we have a deep relationship with the Scribe team around the connectors and the cloud-based services that they're providing, and we're working on really iterating with them on the best of breed solutions to go to market with. And of course, from an engineering perspective, we can't always focus on the huge variety of data sources that our customers have out there, and this bridges a very important gap for getting the data wrangled and getting it to the point where doing fantastic things with Power BI is a lot easier once you've got the data where you need it and in the one place and in a reliable configuration. So just great work being done by Scribe. We're definitely supporting them, and I'm sure they'll jump on now and answer a whole bunch of questions. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Colin. And Jason, I guess I'll hand it back to you. We can go through some of these questions.
All right, let's do that. And if you still have questions that you have not yet entered, please put them into the Q&A block on the right. We'll get to as many as we have time for. So to start off, there are a couple of variations on a question that I'm going to sort of paraphrase here that have come in. Why should I use replication services? I can have Power BI connected directly to CRM Online.
So that's an excellent question, and what I'm hearing from customers and what partners are sharing with me, and I think even Microsoft, who might have something to add to this as well, but the idea of pointing directly to CRM, the ability to kind of have that data reflect the user that's selecting it, so you don't have that kind of control. It's you're kind of drinking from the fire hose. And the idea is that it really isn't set up to be able to kind of be very narrowed and pinpointed to the targeted information that you're looking for. So what you're having to do is when you're pointing directly to it is you're really consuming a lot of data out of the gate. You're relying on somebody knowing what they're looking for. So it's really kind of positioned to be a kind of a quick fix, but the idea is to kind of think about it in terms of your enterprise, to think about it in terms of having an organization. That's really the difference. So it's the individual trying to pull down the individual information that they care about versus using Scribe to kind of pull down just that targeted information, centralizing it, not having to go through every single entity, because that's basically what happens when you're pointing directly to with Power BI is you're having to browse through everything. So the idea is that we've kind of bridged that gap for you, and it positions you to be able to kind of customize that, streamline it, so that way when you're pointing your Power BI to those tables and to that cube perhaps, that it's already formatted and it's positioned for you to be able to use it right out of the gate.
All right. Can Scribe Online be used to help enhance the timeliness of the Power BI model refresh? And can yeah, okay. So let's leave it at that first. It's a multi-part question.
Yeah, so that's part of this is part of the first question almost, because that's some of the other challenge as well, is that when you're trying to do a refresh, you're having to refresh against all of the data in your CRM system when you're using the Power BI connector. So where you see a performance enhancement is when you're pointing down to your Azure database, where you've only selected the data that you want to report on. So you're not having to browse against all of those entities. You're really targeting the specific data. You can also address security there as well. And this is where performance really starts to become, really starts dialing up. This is where you're starting to see the enhancement come into play here, is because when you're pointing to that targeted information, you're processing it faster. You're not refreshing against the entire CRM database. You're only refreshing against that data that you've already targeted that you care about. So, and because it's incremental with regards to what we're pushing to the database, again, you're not having to look at everything. So that will reflect in your refresh times.
All right. Question about replication between CRM Online and I think it's CRM on-premise. Can replication be used for that purpose?
So when you may say replication, so replication services is really designed to be replication from CRM to a back-end database. You would really need to look at our, and as Lou pointed out in the first part of our presentation, our integration services. So to answer your question in short, no, not with replication services, but with Scribe's integration services. Again, using the same platform, but in the integration mode, you could do what you're describing. So you could do CRM to CRM leveraging our integration services, and we also have starter packs that kind of pre-map a whole host of entity data, so that way you're not having to kind of start from scratch. So that would really be the direction I would point you in for that.
Okay, a question about licenses and or subscriptions in the kind of scenario you've outlined. What exactly would a customer need to have purchased or subscribed to make the scenario work? And also wondering about the sizing of the Azure resources to replicate the data that they might desire to use.
So let's start with the licensing question first. I don't know if that's something you want to touch on.
Yeah, I'll take care of that one. All of our cloud services, are available to our end user customers, either from Scribe or through our partner channel, and both RS and IS are on a subscription basis. There, you can get an annual, a 2-year, a 3-year subscription. What we see typical in the market today is a 3-year subscription. The cost for replication services is very, very competitive in the market. It's $4.99 a month, and which translates into $59.88 on an annual basis. So if you do an annual subscription, it is a one-pay annual subscription fee, or you can do, as I said, a 2- or 3-year subscription. I will also mention that we are working on some very creative programs with Microsoft to offer replication services to the Power BI partners as part of what they're doing with Power BI. And news at 11 on that one as well. And so, Ryan, I'll hand it back to you for the technical side of that question.
Sure. So with regards to sizing your SQL Azure database, again, this kind of comes back to planning. So kind of having some idea in advance, I believe when you size out your SQL Azure database, there is obviously there's pricing differences with regards to how much data you need to, or how much storage you need. But I believe Microsoft really kind of does a good job of supporting you with regards to, you're only being billed for what you use. So idea is that you want to have some frame of reference for how much space you need. But my understanding is Microsoft is very good about the flexibility of being able to provision additional space as needed, as well as really not forcing you into a box. If you're not sure and you select you want more data, you probably won't. My understanding is, and Colin, you can certainly jump in if I've stepped all over this, but the idea is you're not billed for something that you're not using.
Okay, Colin, feel free to jump in if you'd like to. Otherwise, I'll just move on to another question
No,
here.
that's fine. Yeah, it's
Okay.
perfectly fine. Yeah.
All right. So, question about table creation in Azure. Maybe I missed this, but does replication automatically create the SQL table?
Excellent question. The answer is yes. So you don't have to pre-stage anything. So the idea is all you have to do is provision your SQL database in SQL Azure and make sure that you have the appropriate permissions, and that's it. And then Scribe Replication Services will take care of the rest.
Another person writes, we are a Scribe on-prem customer. Is there additional licensing required to use the replication service and also to create the Azure SQL database? Is there any, well, you've covered this, I guess, but is there any additional licensing required on the Azure side?
Well, as far as the first part of that question, if you're a Scribe on-premise customer, our Scribe Online platform is a completely separate platform from Scribe Insight. So yes, it is an additional a cost, an additional fee, which I mentioned a bit earlier. As far as the other part of that was there any additional cost on the Azure SQL side? I guess that really depends on the customer's deployment.
It does, yeah. That comes back to the earlier question about it really depends upon what you need to provision and how much you're actually going to use. So that's going to vary customer to customer.
Okay. Do you have to specify the field that contains the modified on date?
No, you don't. So again, this is where our connector and working with Microsoft and their development team is we really designed it around the solution and really kind of being able to identify that for you. So in replication services, when you're leveraging our dynamic CRM connector, you can literally, there's a description associated with each of the entities. So you literally, we will tell you this entity does not have a modify date. So you would not have to kind of know that in advance. All you would need to do is scroll through, identify the entity that you want to replicate, and we'll tell you whether or not it has a modify date or not.
All right, great. A couple people have asked about the recording. We are recording today. We will be reaching out to everyone with details on how to access that within the next few days after today's event. Is the string map entity, I think this is for Ryan, is the string map entity one of those with no modified date?
I have to go look that up. I'm afraid I don't know that off the top of my head, but we can certainly come back and give that response back to you.
Okay, from a Power BI point of view, what options exist for refreshing reports and dashboards?
Well, I can answer that as well. So with regards to when you're leveraging Power BI and you're pointing to a cube or, in this case, a SQL Azure database, there's an advanced option that allows you to select how often you want that to refresh. So you have the opportunity to make that automatic adjustment with regards to the database connection that you make.
All right. So another person asks, we need to combine on-prem data with CRM data and would prefer to surface many of our dashboards and reports in the CRM UI. What are the options for exposing Power BI via CRM?
Colin, I think that might be a good one for you if this is something you can cover for us.
Yeah, sorry, can you repeat the last bit there for me?
The last part was, what are the options for exposing Power BI via CRM? And this person has multiple data sources for on-prem data and CRM data.
Yeah, I guess one of the reasons why Scribe's been effective for us is because the existing content pack that we've had with CRM. I mean, are we talking dynamic CRM, or are we talking CRM in general, like Salesforce?
They didn't specify, so for the person who asked that, they want to let us know if it's dynamic CRM, if it's CRM Online. But I think we could assume, maybe for the purposes of answering, that it is dynamic CRM.
Yeah, for Dynamics. So the content pack within Power BI hasn't been robust enough to do that refresh and to understand everything that's going on inside of CRM. So the Scribe has bridged that gap, but we really need to further augment that depending on the solution. So why don't we get some more details of that question sent across to us, and we'll come back and answer it in more detail.
All right, great.
With the engineers here, I think that would be the best.
And I'd certainly invite anybody that, if there's a follow-on question or a further question that we're not answering completely, Ryan's email is up on the screen. Feel free to email Ryan. We'll make sure we get any particular questions to Colin and his team, or if we can answer a particular question, we will as well.
Yeah, I do see that it was dynamic CRM, so I think that assumption was accurate on taking that one. But moving on here, so there's a question on what is the pricing model, and is it per data transferred?
When we talk about replication services, both for our replication services and our integration services, we used to price all of our cloud services based on the amount of rows of data that's processed. Although for this year, we've changed that pricing model. We've gone to a very, very simple pricing model. So for Scribe Online Replication Service, the pricing is really based on the number of databases that you want to replicate to. So for example, the price I mentioned earlier, the $4.99 a month, $50.98 for a year, that allows you to replicate to an unlimited number of databases. So that's how replication services is priced. And as I mentioned, it's a very, very competitive price in the market for that type of service, where you may want to replicate something to your SQL Azure database. You may want to replicate something to an on-premise SQL database, or 3 or 4 other databases, and you can do that all with the one subscription of replication.
Okay. The next question I see here, I'm going to try to sort of paraphrase it, but this person's asking about scenario here. So they have CRM on-premise that's internet-facing. Can they use the Scribe replication service to replicate their on-premise CRM to Azure SQL, and then use the Power BI connector or another connector later?
Yeah, so, certainly. So the idea, so obviously if you're in the process of putting together your architecture for replication services first, which would make sense anyway, yes, that's not something that, there's no time scenario requirement around plugging Power BI into it. If you were using SSRS or something like that in advance of Power BI, you could certainly use that to the SQL Azure database, and then somewhere in the near future, then use your Power BI dashboard to connect to that same server.
Okay. So another person actually is more making a point here that the not all entities are pushed over via the out-of-the-box service pack that comes with Power BI for CRM Online. That it only exposes some of the information, and Scribe replication would, without it, you would need to use the desktop app for Power BI to publish various views that you would need. Thanks, John, for pointing that out. I don't know, Ryan, any comment on that, or do you want to just move on?
No, that's just an accurate statement. So yeah, that's certainly true.
Okay. Okay, great. So what about cubes and hitting those for reporting? What does Scribe do for us in that situation?
So really that's like a post replication step. So where we would, phase one of any job, even if you were building a data warehouse from scratch with custom coding, which probably would not be the most efficient approach, you would basically be replicating out to this SQL database the tables, the entities rather, that you're looking to do your reporting from. And then you would then develop a tabular cube or a multidimensional cube that would then pull data from that SQL Azure database and then construct your cubes and your measures there and develop your model that you would then point your Power BI reports to.
Okay. Does the Salesforce connector also auto-detect the modified date?
They're very similar there. So basically, both connectors have some similarities in the sense that they do look and approach the entities the same way. So where there is a modified date that is not available, you will see that listed in the description of the entity. So yes.
Okay. Can this be used to create snapshots of the data? For example, open opportunities measured on one date versus the number on another date?
So replication services, we don't have you don't have those what they would call formulas or sort of those intelligent sort of modifications that you would do. We really take the entity and replicate it over. That would be something that I would do. That's sort of the calculations that I would write in a report and then point that to the database where I would be looking for particular data based on that criteria. But with replication services, that we just take the whole entity and replicate that over to the database. But our integration services would do that on the fly. So if this were something to be more detailed, if that were a requirement that you wanted to do in advance of pointing your report to it, our replication services would probably not fit that mold. I would use our integration services to perform that function.
All right, and a question on Scribe Integration Services. Is that a good tool for sharing master records with or between multiple tenants on a CRM server?
Yes, it would, and that's really kind of part of it, how it's designed. It's really one of the strengths of our integration services component is that you can build those and you could put those rules in place and you could define how you want that data to be integrated across those different CRM orgs, and you could also have it bidirectional. So whereas you may have under one scenario one org being the application of record, and you could have that go bidirectionally based on the data and what's being updated.
Okay, so we are down to just another question or two, so I'll make a final call here for folks to get any other questions in before we conclude. There's actually a note here. Someone just noted that with regard to getting Power BI reports back into CRM, one option might be using an iframe, publishing BI dashboards, Power BI dashboards to the web, and then using an iframe in CRM perhaps. So thanks for that suggestion. So a couple questions here, kind of more focused on Power BI. One, asking about Power BI pricing, and can we use any external data along with CRM data in Power BI?
Those would really be probably for Colin.
Yeah, that's for Colin. I mean, the answer is yes, but yeah, Colin could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so obviously we're working very hard with a number of external data vendors for not really public data sources, but for enterprise data sources that you can land directly in Power BI. That's through the Services tab, if you like, under Get Data. So you can bring in your Google Analytics, your GitHub, your Mockito data, once you provide your login there. And then, of course, you've got the ability to integrate external data sources by staging them, on the SQL server that's stood up by the Scribe integration, or however your strategy is for your cloud-based external data. But the focus with Power BI is to make it a lot easier to bring those sources in. Do you want to bring those sources in and mash them up and create data models in the Power BI service, or do you want to make that more robust by doing that in analysis services? That's a matter for architectural design, but yes, a large emphasis on external data sources, especially with CRM-based data.
All right, great. And one more question here. What does your integration service do for us that SSIS does not do?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I'll give you my answer on that first, and Ryan can certainly look at it from a technical standpoint. What integration services does for our end user customers versus SSIS, just like any other, quote, custom coding scenario, is the fact that our platform really allows a partner and a customer to manage the integration life cycle. And that's really where we're focused. When you think about the majority of our customers that start off integrating two applications, whether it's CRM to SQL or CRM to a back office application, and within 6 months, 90% of those customers add other integration points. So, if you're using a tool like SSIS, you're writing custom code every time that you're doing those integrations. If over time APIs change on, for example, one of the applications like in CRM, okay, it now becomes a break-fix issue with SSIS and custom code versus with integration services, you just download the new version of our connector for dynamic CRM and you're good to go. Over time, if that developer that writes the SSIS code for an integration, the single point integration, leaves the company and there's additional applications that need to be added or updates to the APIs, what do you do? And who knows where that integration or how that integration was written. All of these type of issues really just become easy management issues over time during the integration life cycle, which is constantly ongoing. So that's where the integration services platform really provides greater value than just writing point integrations with SSIS. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I don't know that I could have said it better myself. I can certainly tell you from a technical perspective, and I'll tell you, I made my living building custom code in SSIS and developing custom packages. But I can tell you, when I think about it from terms of sitting on the other side of the desk and having to think about the logistics and the maintenance and what it takes to make a change, and because we know that CRM and other CRM solutions outside of Dynamics, I mean, there's going to be changes, there's going to be enhancements, there's going to be new features, there's going to be new fields, new entities. And in those scenarios, you typically have to call me, you come back in, crack open that black box that I created for you, and hope to God that I remember what I was thinking when I wrote the documentation, to then make the updates and the changes, to then deploy that package back out to the server, make sure that no one changed the .NET version on me too many versions ahead than the package was when I created it, and just a whole host of things that you just don't have to worry about anymore. So again, it's really kind of, some organizations have that huge deep bench of developers, but there are those that just simply don't. And instead of really kind of pigeonholing yourself and narrowing your ability to adjust to these changes when it comes to your integrations, or even adding new solutions, really integration services is the way to be able to scale that out and do it in a way that doesn't require you to have to kind of start from scratch.
Yeah, and just to, earlier when Ryan showed our marketplace of connectors, it's really also about the connectivity. There's got to be close to 100 connectors available now on our integration services, and that's across any number of types of databases. Someone asked the question earlier about, what about other data types, right, to integrate into Power BI? Well, with replication services, what we talked about today, you can replicate data from your cloud-based CRM systems into SQL Azure. Well, with integration services, we have a connector for SQL. So you can move data from a myriad of applications, cloud-based, on-premise-based, ERP applications, marketing automation applications, into that same SQL database and have it available to you for Power BI as well. So that's really the power. That's really where the power of our integration services comes in as well.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to start wrapping up here. We did record today's event for those who are asking about that, and we'll be making that available quite soon in the next few days. So thanks for all the great questions to everyone in the audience who stuck around here, and of course to our panelists, thanks for attending, for presenting today, Lou, Ryan, and Colin.
Yeah, and thanks, thanks again, Colin, as well. Thanks, Jason. I wanted to thank you and Microsoft Dynamics World. It's always a pleasure to take part in your sessions that you do for the community out there.
Our pleasure. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up today. So thanks again for joining, and have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you all.